Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to a Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us again. And before we start, many of you have been asking, how do I avail myself of all the previous episodes? And it's a very simple process. You go onto YouTube, you find the Time for Truth show, and click the subscribe button. We would love to have you as part of our subscribers, and you'll be availed of all the previous episodes and programs that we've had with artists, musicians, singers, athletes, engineers, researchers, and many, many more. So tonight we're going to speak about something that's very important because our world is in such tumult. And we look at it and we're confused. We're wondering what is happening and why is it happening so rapidly? And why do I feel helpless or resigned to that there's not much I can do about this? Well, we're going to be taking a look at that tonight, and we'll be going over some principles. And we're going to apply some common sense, and I'm going to ask you when you're watching this to actually see and make up your own mind on what you feel is true and correct. Because we've had so many shootings, and we've had a young person going in and shooting children for no real reason. And the horror of the massacre of the nightmare that was created by having done so. And what's happening in our cities with the shootings on July 4th in Philadelphia, with the subways in New York City. Really, if you look, it's happening all across our country, and really it's happening globally. Why? What's happening? Well, let's go over some principles. I know most of you know that I'm a 40-year implant periodontal surgeon. And when someone comes to see me, and really any dentist, we provide a calm environment. Why a calm environment? Because they're already very stressed when they come to see us. They see me. And so we know that as professionals, doctors, that by reducing their anxiety, making them comfortable so that their fear disappears or at least reduces, then their treatment becomes much more able to be done in a kind and efficacious manner. And that if we do it with them anxious, then we're going to increase their stress. And probably they will have a rough time healing with more pain, discomfort. It's a very interesting thing that it seems that when they're more calm through the procedure, and we provide that for them, that they seem to do better. And really, if you speak to any doctor, it wouldn't be anything unusual for him to agree. If we look at the hospital in terms of maternity wards, we see that during the birthing of our children, now it's a common practice to maintain quiet. Because we know that that infant, that newborn, can hear, can perceive, and is affected by the words, by the environment, by the things around them. And you know that there are many books now and philosophies on speaking to your unborn child while they're in your wife's womb. Or if you're a woman, while you're carrying your child. And that it's not unusual, really, for that to be said, really, I think at this point, probably globally, that it's been accepted that the child hears and is affected emotionally, and that he or she can perceive. So if we look at these things, then we realize that as human beings, which we all are, it cuts across all nations, cultures, religions, races, that as human beings, we all respond to stress. It's pretty well known that if you get sick, people say, well, you know, I've been really stressed. My immunity went down. And there was something when I trained that was called general adaptation syndrome, which was a stressful syndrome which seemed to be correlated with increased infirmity, disease, delayed healing. And it's something that's been studied, and it's really not anything unusual or unordinary. So then, if we know that stress is something that affects our mental and physical well-being, our immunity, then we would say, well, let's take a look at what's happening in our world. And let's look a little bit further, because if that unborn child can hear, what happens if we reverse the process and we didn't do it in a proper way? What would be the results? Could we have an explanation as to why we may be getting this violence, this shootings, and these changes in our society? So I'm going to show you a video, and it's the first video, and it's something that's very easy to find many different copies of. I just picked one as an example, for no particular reason. And the engineer, if you can put the video on about having too much bad news that we listen to. Please, let's play that video. Video number 1.
Well, consuming too much bad news can actually be hazardous for your health. A psychotherapist says it triggers a stress response, and repeated exposure can lead to symptoms like headaches, poor sleep, anxiety, and depression. I've got all of these. Oh my. Physical and emotional health isn't the only concern. An overload of traumatic news can also lead to disaster fatigue, making us less concerned and more apathetic to a crisis. I'm just going to read happy news from now on.
So there's a little excerpt, but if you really think about it, with everything we just mentioned up to now, that if there was a lot of negativity, shooting, killing, and overdose of all this constant bombardment with negative news, that more than likely that would have a very stressful effect. I don't think any of us want to hear about one of our friends having died, even when it happens of natural causes. It's a big loss to us when we love someone and they pass away of natural causes. So imagine now having something of violent cause on top of already the death. Is going to accentuate, exacerbate, and make worse the effect on a human being. When the Twin Towers were destroyed, that was really something that was felt around the world, and we never ask ourselves, but how was it that we sensed it around the world? Why was there that dark feeling throughout the world? Why was the world grieving? Sometimes I think we don't really pay attention to that we're, as human beings, quite perceptive beyond just words, beyond just hearing or touching, that we perceive things and instinctively know things, and that things have occurred. So let's look further, because one of the problems in our fast-paced, technologically advanced world with media and videos, although there's tremendous benefits with communication and speed, Some of that has been negative. And unfortunately, there had been different games that have become very popular and that we spend many minutes, hours, sometimes days playing, and with some consequences. So let's take a look at the next video. And this would have to do now with some video games and what has been said about it, and to bring something else to light as we come to look at what's going on in our world. Let's play the second video, please, engineer.
Or otherwise. In 1976, the industry was already making $25 billion annually. In 2018, it made more than $136 billion. So the stakes are high. Depending on what scientists find, there's a whole lot to be gained or lost. Brad Bushman and Christopher Ferguson are perhaps the best-known researchers representing each side of this dispute. They are both psychologists who have spent years researching video games and violence. They use similar methods and do similar experiments, but they've wound up on either side of a line drawn clearly in the sand. So why do these researchers disagree so strongly, and how did we get here?
So you can't look at anybody without pointing your gun at them.
Right. That's true.
In 1976, video game company Exidy released a game called Death Race. To play it, you put your hands on an actual steering wheel, your foot's on a pedal, you drive around a car and murder anything in your way. You hear the screams of your victims, and their gravestones litter the screen. Soon after its release, there were calls to ban it. There was outrage, and many were worried about what it was doing to their kids. Okay, so Death Race did come out in 1976. That's 4 years before Pac-Man. Its graphics are primitive and barely recognizable. But the game resulted in what was perhaps the first widespread panic about violence in video games. And while that may seem laughable now, those concerns didn't go anywhere.
Do violent video games make for violent kids?
Officials say they are responding to complaints from parents that children have skipped school or stolen money to play the games and made a nuisance of themselves.
Outrage exploded again in 1992 with the release of games like Mortal Kombat and Night Trap.
Parents are often the first to ask, could this lead to this?
Mortal Kombat featured especially violent deaths, and Night Trap showed sexual violence against women.
So then we say, well, no, it's just a game. There's no correlation. But is there? And how is it that these games are proliferated? And is it coincidental that the violence has proliferated and increased? How is it? Are we going to ignore statistics and somehow justify them in some other way? And why should younger generation be more violent than the previous generations if the games were really of no recourse? There was no reason, that there was no effect of them. Well, let's take a look at a few more things, because you saw at the beginning of the video that there's a monetary economic gain. And sometimes we ask in our world, have we lost sight of humanity, integrity, and honor, and the pursuit of economics, of returns, of stock gains, of profits, of having more things, while we're at the same time, while we're having these more things, these material possessions, we're losing our fellows. And what is the value of life if we have no other fellow to share with and to interact with? What is really life all about? Do we just want to have a lot of things and end up in reality as in a science fiction movie of the future, but no longer science fiction, but actually a reality of the present? So we have to take a look at economics And then as we were talking about these effects of repeating messages and playing out or acting out in video games and the effects that we have in the world, then we have to take a look at the increased use, especially during and after COVID, the about 40 to 50% increased use of alcohol and drugs during this pandemic. Now, why do I bring that out? Well, because the alcohol and the drugs are making our fellows less aware, more unconscious. And if they're actually doing this while they're playing these video games, the problem is, and this is well known by anyone who is well versed with mental treatment or using mental effects, it's a sort of hypnotism. And so do we want to hypnotize people while they're drugged or on alcohol or high, and hypnotize them with negative thoughts and negative consequences from these video games that they're playing? And what are the repercussions to society to just say, well, but you know, we're legalizing the drugs so that, and we're making good economic gains. And these video games, we're making great economic gains. But at what cost? And if it's your child, would you still say, well, we're making economic gains? I know I'm being a little harsh and hard here, but there's a point to get across, because as a surgeon, sometimes we see things, and as surgeons, and I see things, that become obvious to us as a doctor, but the patient is not aware, or the patient knows but it was ignoring, and we sometimes have to let them know that they shouldn't pursue that course any further, or they'll get a heart attack. Or if it's just a tooth, that they're going to lose their tooth or their teeth, and they're going to need dental implants, and they're going to have to go through surgical treatment, and it's a tremendous expense. So here we're looking at now the increased use of alcohol and drugs worldwide because of the stress level of the society, because of the isolation, because of the economic duress. And we go, oh, stress. Dr. Fialkoff mentioned that at the beginning of the show. Stress, decreased immunity, stress, not feeling good, having depression, leading to more drug use. And now we have the subliminal messages of these video games and the negative information coming out constantly. So let's take a look at the next video, and we will take a look at another problem. Is that it seems like at times that certain messages are repeated over and over and over again. And, you know, and so let's take a look. And with the knowledge we've gained so far, we can take a look at some more repercussions. But let's first watch the video. Buddha engineer, please put on the third video.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Yes, this is extremely dangerous to any democracy. This is extremely dangerous to decreasing stress. Why do we sometimes quit a job? Because we find it, the boss is too overbearing and too negative. Why do we leave? Why is it that when someone comes into an area, we all feel a little bit strange, and when they leave, all of a sudden, the environment lightens up? How is that possible? Yet we all know that that is true because we've all encountered it. How do you walk into a room sometimes and you feel that something has happened there, or you feel uncomfortable? It seems like the couple have argued, or you go to a party, or you're visiting with some family and you can tell that they've been arguing. Well, here we go again with things that we know, but sometimes we don't really take a look at. So here we have then, if we put this together, that as sentient human beings, we all have tremendous capacity to perceive and are affected by negativity. That's why we gravitate to nice music, to the beach with the beautiful sound of the ocean, to the rain at night, and the dew in the morning with the smell of roses. We love pleasant and pleasantry and wonderful and savory foods. We don't enjoy poisons and negative environments, harsh sounds. We seek to find equanimity, calmness. So when we look at what's going on in our world, and I'm not going to be concluding for you, because there's a saying, it's very important that each one of us actually looks for ourselves and finds for ourselves what's true for us. Because what's true for you is really the only thing that's true, because when you've lost your own integrity and honor, you really are like a leaf blowing in the wind. You've lost everything. You've lost your ability to guide yourself. So if we take a look at what's been happening in our country, and we don't want to lose our liberty, our justice, our social structure, we would start, instead of talking about it, making sure that the environment was calmer. Going out and putting a little bit of order into your house. Maybe playing nice music. Maybe planting a tree. Maybe cleaning up a room. Maybe offering help for someone who is homeless or is hungry or has no job. These things are all positive and create humanity. We help each other. But violence, crime, these are symptoms of disease. And as doctor, we want to apply the antibiotic, the proper diet, the change in environment, exercise, get out in the sun. Well, it's very interesting that a calm environment, getting out in the sun, getting away from negative conversations, constant negativity, listening to positive solutions. It's amazing what can happen to alleviate these stressful situations that we feel and to feel better about what's going on. You would have to take a look. How much media do you want to be exposed to? It's your decision. Is it good for your child to play these destructive or violent video games? You would have to decide. Would it be good for the media to put on positive shows as regarding cures, different nutritional discoveries, different techniques to getting better. I'm sure that their audience would be very interested in this, especially with all the negativity that all of us, including the media, the government, we all have encountered, because we're all human beings. And pointing fingers, being critical, again, that's negativity. That's not what this show is about. This show is a time for truth. And it's a time that we take a look at how we can get together. I don't think there's any mother or father watching this show right now, uncle or aunt, who would want their children or their nieces and nephews to be shot in some other shooting, or to have another law passed that restricts even more freedom. So we need to take a look at this. We need to see, is it okay just to legalize all kinds of different things and it has no consequence? Is that really true? We need to do scientific study like we do in medicine, in dentistry, in healthcare. We do studies and compare results. But we have the figures, but we need to take a look. And to do the proper study, we first have to observe and be willing to just see the facts for what they are. So I hope you've enjoyed this show. And I'm not going to conclude for you, because it's your own decision. It's your own determinism as to how you're going to guide your life, what you feel the community should be more involved in, and your voice, because your voice does make a difference. We live in America, a wonderful country, democracy with justice and liberty for all, a country that's not perfect, but is a beautiful country with tremendous freedoms. Let's reduce the violence. Let's improve on what's been happening over the last few years. Let's stop playing football with the country and let's actually work together. Let's forget about political party and look about the American people and the country, the United States of America. Let's forget about rhetoric and let's apply some human kindness. And regardless of the religion, and with all of our religions, let's really apply our religious beliefs and our philosophies, all of ours, and actually bring humanity and spirituality into our world in combination with all the technology that we have, so that combining East and West and all, we create a new time. Thank you so much for watching this show. I hope it sparked some interest, and if it has, that was the purpose. Become a subscriber to A Time for Truth show. More importantly, become a subscriber to your community, to your state, to your country, to the planet. Because we all are living on a boat made of wood. It's in the middle of the ocean and a hurricane is coming. The time to act is before we're in the hurricane. Good night.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet